everybody, and welcome to today's webinar event in which I'll be talking to real estate expert Danny Buxton about ways to achieve success with property investments. And one of the fundamentals we'll discuss today is that smart property investment decisions are best made by tuning out news media. Media is relentlessly negative, often fueled by pessimistic forecasts from economists whose track records in predicting real estate outcomes is woefully bad. There's a better way, based around sound advice, genuine research, and sensible strategies. So let's get into it and meet our special guest today. Danny Buxton runs a highly successful real estate business called 000, helping property investors make good choices and achieving success. Danny, welcome.
Thank you, Terry, and thank you to everyone else who has joined us on this webinar. Just taking the time to listen, and I'm actually a little bit excited as in preparing for this webinar with the opportunities that exist for those who are genuine about wanting to create real wealth and money through property investment. So looking forward to our conversation and going through those topics together.
Okay. So one of the things we talked about in preparation for this event, Danny, was just whether we thought that 2023 actually represented a time of great opportunity to invest. We certainly think so. At Hotspotting, we've been saying so for the start of the year, and nothing's changed in the market to change our viewpoint. What do you think?
Oh, look, 100%. I mean, again, what we're going to talk about today is tuning out from the noise that we hear in the media. I mean, it was all doom and gloom. We had this very similar conversation, if my memory serves me correct, 3.5 years ago when COVID, beginning of 2020, and therein lied a massive opportunity where a lot of people, there's a lot of negativity, doom and gloom, the sky's falling in, Chicken Little is running around, and you know what, it didn't, because you've got to look at the fundamentals, you've got to look at what's there, and look, I think it's a great time to be buying.
Yeah, and 2020, middle of 2020 is a great example of how if you listen to the media, you would have sat on your hands and missed really great opportunities, because those who did take action went ahead with the plans they had, regardless of the media white noise at that time, made 20% or more in capital gain in the next 12 months. Similar scenario has evolved this year, Danny. At the start of this year, all the bank economists were forecasting prices were going to fall 15-20%. There was a poll conducted by the Australian Financial Review of 33 economists at the start of the year, and the average result was a fall of 15% in property prices this year. And of course, here we are in August, and clearly that hasn't happened. Prices have been rising pretty much since the start of the year, pretty much everywhere. Not boom time prices, but certainly good, solid, sustainable growth.
100%. And there are ways that you can actually help manufacture some additional growth in that process, which we'll discuss today as well. But I couldn't agree with you more. I think those who are smart are counter-cyclical to what everyone else is talking about and doing. And as I said, you know, if you do it right, you do it properly, you're not only able to build your portfolio for now, but you're actually future-proofing that investment in the long term. So, and that's what it's all about.
So you've got a presentation for us to just show us
absolutely.
how to go about it in the right way.
Yeah, I'll just share my screen now and we'll get straight into it. No worries. So again, thank you everyone for being part of our webinar today. We do have a little bit of a disclaimer there, just in the fact that, look, this is general information only. We're not taking into account your personal objectives. You need to do that. Get professional advice. There are an example of a case study that we're using in this presentation. It is a real genuine case study, but it's just for illustrative purposes only. As always, though, please seek professional advice before you do any investing whatsoever. So, and again, who are we? 000 Property. Look, really, at the end of the day, is we're here to, I guess, help you navigate the market in property, and we want to work with you and hold your hand through that process. We are, as a business, we're relational, not transactional, how we do that. And for us, it's really about focusing on your success as a client. And the more successful you are, the more successful we become. A vast majority of our clients have multiple properties and come back time and time again and refer to their family and friends. We want to identify your goals and help you find the right property that fits your affordability, and comfortably. We've been doing this for 18 years or just on 18 years. And we're just trying to work out how many builds we've done. I think we've been close to 1,000 over that time frame. So we've certainly, this is not our first rodeo. But to us, it's all about our clients and about you getting that success. As we talked about, and as you've seen in the promo for today's webinar, these are the things that we're going to talk about. And I do have a few slides, so we're going to go through some of those slides fairly quickly. But as always, if someone wants a copy of those slides, you can contact Hotspotting or contact us directly on the information that you're going to be given, and we're happy to send you a copy of those slides in PDF format. So let's talk about media. Terry, we'll talk about this offline. It's just amazing that, as you said, Courier Mail, I think you even put this in one of your weekly updates, said the Brisbane property market is heading for a bloodbath in 2023. It's actually quite the opposite. It's actually grown, and we've had 6 months plus of month on growth.
Yeah, look, I think people need to understand that news media does not have the motivation of wanting to help us. They're not wanting to provide us with useful information. They're wanting to scare us. They want us to induce us to click on headlines, and they figure that the best way to do that is to frighten us and startle us. So the motivation isn't to be helpful, and most of what they publish about residential property is extremely unhelpful. It's melodramatic, it's sensationalized, and it's usually quite negative. And it's very important to be successful in property investment to tune out all that media white noise. Just ignore it. Stop tuning into it. Get real information and get on with your plan.
Well, at the end of the day, what sells papers, it's doom and gloom or boom, nothing in between. And I guess they've got a job to do, but it's unfortunately a lot of people are taking their advice from what they're hearing in the papers, and there's a lot of fear and fear often, I call fear false evidence appearing real. And it causes a lot of inaction and procrastination. And I'm absolutely staggered the amount of procrastination that I'm seeing at the moment. And I believe a lot of that is driven by the media.
And it's a shame because, as we said at the start of the broadcast, this is a time of great opportunity. One of the reasons why it's a great opportunity for investors is that markets aren't as competitive as they were a couple of years ago. The pricing is not as scary as it was in some markets. There's a shortage of everything in real estate. Everything that matters is in short supply. We're not building enough new homes. There's a shortage of rental properties. It means rents are rising and yields are rising. And we just updated our spreadsheet of our top 50 locations for the good rental yields. And in almost every instance, the median rental yield had increased substantially, even in places where prices were rising, which means that rents are rising faster than prices are at the moment. And that's a great equation for the average property investor to take on board and think about not just what the rental yield is on the day that you buy, but what it might be in, say, 2 years' time, which will be substantially more in the current circumstances.
Absolutely. Look, for us, it's focused on that affordability, but also how the growth and the opportunity of that property to grow and having that real growth-focused attitude in the way that you approach. So let's move on to the next slide. But for some reason, I am not been able to do that. And I'm not sure what's going on. Here we go. Oh boy, now you're going to get me started. Politicians, I just staggers me with the stuff that comes out of their mouth sometimes, and the meddling in what they're trying to do and trying to fix this housing crisis, which we're going to talk about. And we've got a guy there who tweets. He likes to tweet, and I'll just read one tweet because I think it's quite funny. If billionaires can afford to buy Twitter, they can afford to pay more tax. I don't know why Chandler Mather is talking about people overseas and why they should be paying tax, because it has nothing to do with the Australian property market or what's going on in Australia. It's just to incite a frenzy to push across his own agenda. And unfortunately, that's all we see a lot of the time with every party, unfortunately.
That's as common as he and others, including the Prime Minister and all the state and territory premiers and chief ministers, go into a major meeting to talk about many things, but number one on the agenda is the housing shortage crisis, and they've got to do something to fix that. But the indications are that none of them really have a clue about how we got into this situation in the first place. Therefore, they don't understand how to fix it.
Well, I think the answer is fairly simple. We need to be working with everyday Australians in the way that they invest, because we provide, as everyday Australians, housing for those in need. That's what we need, more rental properties, and we're going to talk about that as we go. But just look, fortunately, a lot of the thought bubbles that we're seeing are just thought bubbles and don't come into action. But and also be careful you don't make your properties. We saw a lot of people make decisions with selling their property when, I think we were talking about a year ago, when our Queensland Premier talked about land tax, and we said it's not going to happen. It's just not doable. It's not going to happen. In how they're going to manage that, and sure enough, it didn't happen. But unfortunately, people made some silly mistakes in selling their properties at that time in fear. And again, you've just got to work with those who know and take smart advice rather than trying to do it yourself or based on media. So let's talk about the housing crisis. Mate, there's a significant supply and demand issue that we're seeing coming across, which we'll talk about in due course. We think landlords are exiting because of that fear. We are seeing landlords selling up because they've made some really good profits in recent times, but it's exacerbating the supply issue that we have for rental properties. Building starts are at an all-time low, so we're not seeing more housing stock come onto the market. There's limited supply of resales that are coming on, and so we're seeing those really super low vacancy rates, particularly in some areas where we see a real opportunity for growth, and that's where we need to be focusing, where there's going to be good, strong population growth, and the numbers are really big. And as I said, this will only further exacerbate the crisis that we're having. Interestingly enough, in the latest report by the Queensland government, is they actually say rental stress is affecting more Southeast Queensland households than mortgage stress. Would you like to comment at all on that, Terry?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. It's a bit of a generalised statement, but people who are renting tend to be in the lower income brackets, and so the very steep increases in rents that we've seen is obviously comprising a higher percentage of their income than would be the case with people who have mortgages. Although, you know, what's happened with interest rates means there's a certain level of mortgage stress out there, but I think it's overstated by the media, as so many things are. You know, there's no official definition of mortgage stress. Some people like to say anyone who's paying more than 25% of their household income on their mortgages is in stress. And I don't think that's a particularly valid observation at all, but it makes a headline. And so we tend to have an overexpression of just how much stress there is.
No one likes getting that message from the bank that your interest rates are going up. But look, at the end of the day, we're still at the 30-year average where rates are. I do think again, I don't have a crystal ball, but people are apparently a lot smarter than I seem to think that we've probably come to the end. We may see a rise, we may see a fall, we may see nothing really happen. Look, traditionally, I think, you know, our interest rates are still not that high. We're just not used to. We've had 10 years of interest rates going down. And unfortunately, we've just seen 12 months of rates going up and up and up, and it does create a little bit of stress, there's no doubt. But the big issue is the housing crisis of rental properties, and obviously that's what our politicians are talking about today in Brisbane. But very interesting to see what they come up with. So, you know, I think they should be having conversations with people like us, Terry, and people who do this and involved in the industry time, you know, year in, year out, rather than just a thought.
The mentality seems to be, Danny, that they're going to build more houses. Well, that's something they need to do, but it's not going to provide a short-term fix. We need solutions that can be implemented now, and it takes a long time to build 1 million new houses. It's not going to happen in the next few years. What we need is encouragement to property investors to buy properties and make them available for rental. That's the fastest, most practical and most meaningful fix to this problem, but it's unlikely to happen based on what we're hearing from the politicians.
Oh, look, I think the build to rent programs that they're doing, which is offering tax incentives to some very wealthy people to build some high-rise buildings. That will create a small fix or a small band-aid effect in certain places, but it's not going to create a solution for what we're dealing with at the moment. In fact, if you look at the build stats and the starts here in Australia, they are month on. We are at a low. You can see where we hit that peak. That was at the end of the people signing contracts at the end of the Home Building Boost grant that the government put in 2020, and it's been on a decline ever since. And so it is a big issue with what's going on. If we actually have a look at Queensland and Australia as well, the annual trend, 20% down. We're 19.9% down on where we should be, where we need to be when you look at our dwelling approvals, is down 20%. And there's a reason for that. There's a lot of fear. There is fear out there, which we'll talk about with builders, and it's absolutely, you should be concerned and you need to be very careful with who you build with. But in Australia, it's 14.5%. So we've wanted to create more houses, but our building starts are low.
And that's happening at a time where the migrant income rate is rising, and the federal government says it wants to dramatically lift that as well. So,
well, you haven't seen these slides yet, but that's exactly what we're talking about here in this next slide. We've got a population of 26.5 million people, which is forecasted by 2041. We'll see a 24.9% increase to 33 million people. That's big growth. If we look at Southeast Queensland, just at a regional glance, again, this has just come out in the new Southeast Queensland research project by the government. There's 20.2 million people are going to move into the 11 LGAs in Southeast Queensland by 2046, so in the next 23 years. We need 900, this is their stats, 900,000 new homes. That's 40,000 homes per annum that we need to create in Southeast Queensland. At the moment in Queensland, we're doing 30,000. So we're already 10,000 short this year, which means next year it's 40,000 plus another 10,000. And we're not going to do 50,000 next year. We're still lucky to do 40,000. So it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And we are not creating and building enough properties. And the government needs to do something and incentivise everyday Australians to do stuff. But herein also lies the opportunity for investors if they do it right. But if not only is there a housing crisis, there's actually a building crisis as well. We at 000 Property, we build investment properties. We help our clients build investment properties. And we're like a building broker. We go out there and we work really hard to source the right block of land in the right area with the right builder to get the right property that's going to make you money. And as we said, we desperately need new builds, but getting the right builder is more important. And I talked about this in previous webinars, but it's more important than ever before. We're seeing every day in the media of builders going belly up. And you know what? I still think we're going to see that for some time to come. And so that's why it's really important to know your builder. But with building starts at really big lows, I see a massive opportunity for us to capitalise as investors through building an investment property. But you've got to have the right people around you so you can reap those rewards. So if we look at what you've got to look at with the builder, firstly, they've got to be financially strong. You need to be able to understand where they sit with their financials, not just some salesperson telling you this or telling you that. You know, we've been doing this for 18 years, helping people, and every builder that we work with, we ensure we understand where their financial capacity is at. And we look at the quality of their builds and their finish. People are just chasing price. Cheap is not best. You're chasing a cheap build along the way. It'll either cost you more through a builder coming back and asking you for more money during the build, which is not a good thing to happen, particularly if you've got a very tight budget. Or what's going to happen, and unfortunately we see this time and time again, we're about to hand over a couple of properties in Brisbane, and just around the corner is a house which has been at frame stage for the last 18 months because that builder stopped work and then went into administration about 6 months ago. So you need to understand their current builds under construction and their start and build times. You've got to understand how quickly and how many builds they did last year, the year before, and understand their growth and making sure that they're managing their growth effectively. Doing license checks, and more importantly too, just understand what is included and what is not included. We often talk about turnkey, and we see a lot of turnkey packages promoted on the market. And I call turnkey versus turkey. You take the letter N out of turnkey and you get a turkey. And unfortunately, I know it's a bit of a bad dad joke, but it's not a joke. There are people who think they're getting something and they're getting something very different. You need to know exactly what is in and what is not in your build contract. And that's what we do at 000 Property. We're very careful with our panel of builders that we deal with. We reduced that back at the beginning of COVID. We saw this happen, and we spoke about this when the Home Building Boost Grant happened, that we're on the record here with you, Terry, talking about this being a major concern for us. And sure enough, it's come into play. Fortunately not for our clients, because we're very careful and very diligent of the building panel that we use and utilize. In fact, I'm building right now. This is actually my block is the one furthest on the left. That's my client's. That's a client of mine. That's Jason's block there, and mine is the one next to that. I see opportunity, and I'm building right now with a builder that I have complete confidence in, who's cash strong. We have a relationship with those builders where I get to pick up the phone and talk to the owners, the managing directors of those building companies if I've got a concern at any time during building. Is very stressful, but it's during the build process that you can actually capitalize and actually make really good money. People are paying a premium for a house already complete. They don't want to go through the stress and the anxiety of going through the build. Our clients don't need to go through the stress because we manage that process. We mitigate risk every step of the way. I know, do you want to comment on anything about the build side of things? I know I'm going through this.
I had a question. I just wondered where that was, Danny. Where are you?
Where have I built? This is actually in Aura on the Sunshine Coast, near the south of Caloundra. It's an area that I particularly see real opportunity. We fight very hard. Look, we get presented many options. We get regular options that are presented and put in front of us. But when we don't tend to hold stock. When we have a client who comes to us, we understand what they want to do and where they want to go, or what their affordability is and what their goals are. And then we go out and we try to find an option that we think is going to tick a box for them. When we look at an area or a release, we don't just sit there and go, great, there's 40 blocks. We'll take this one, this one, this one. We actually look at every block and we select the blocks that we believe are the best. And if we don't see anything in that release that we like, if we don't see anything that we like, we don't move forward. We keep looking. And that's why we get those results. But this is in Aura.
Danny, a lot of people would look at a map of a housing estate and it all looks pretty much the same. You just referred to selecting the best blocks. Well, what constitutes a better block?
It's position within the estate. It could be what we know is being built around it. You know, I don't want to build a property where everyone around me is investment. I want to be surrounded by own occupiers. I want to have the right specification too in my house as well. But location in the estate, look at the fundamentals, and actually I'll touch on that in a few slides' time, Terry. But what you put in your build is really important too. And so we work really carefully. We're constantly tweaking the specifications, and that spec will change depending where we're building, whether it's in Adelaide, whether it's here, whether it's in Perth, whether it's in Brisbane. Depending where I'm building, depending on the demographics, will determine what style of house and what inclusions are going to be put in. And so that's what drives that location future performance. We look at the population growth that's going to occur. We look at the supply of land and when that supply is going to run out. If I'm going into an area where there's consistent supply, my growth may be stunted a little bit. But again, it all comes down to my goals and what I'm trying to achieve will determine where I go. Economic growth is important, as we've always talked about. Infrastructure spend, you want to follow that infrastructure spend, but supply and demand and population growth are key things that we see opportunity for our clients. You know, there's a little map there on the side. Adelaide is another area where we see great opportunity. Sunshine Coast, Brisbane, Adelaide are two big standout areas. But we look for multiple growth drivers in what we do. We've all seen the end result of those investors who choose areas with a single growth driver or a single economy, for example, mining resource towns. You can go through phases of really good growth. But then when the market changes, we see that I really call that speculation rather than investing. I invest for long-term sustainable growth where I'm future-proofing my investment. And this is what I do. You can see in that last slide, I invest where my clients invest. And it's how I built my wealth. And our team are doing exactly the same thing as well.
The beauty of the market as it currently exists, Danny, is you don't need to take those sorts of risks to get really good results. You don't need to invest in mining towns to get good capital growth and high rental yields. They exist in some of the places you're talking about, like in regional Queensland and in Adelaide.
Absolutely. And that's where we're focused on Southeast Queensland, obviously the Brisbane region, Sunny Coast, Gympie, Wide Bay, Central Coast. Look, Adelaide region, I think there's some great, we're just looking at some packages, some houses there, brand new, build in that 430 price range. I mean, with a rent right now 400, where the property manager we're talking down there says, look, we see them growing by $30 a week within the next 6 to 12 months, and then further again because of the demand that is in that area. So there's great opportunity, but cheap isn't always best, and so you've got to understand what's right for you as a client and your needs and what you're trying to achieve, and then we can go from there. But obviously you've got to balance your rental yield with your growth and work within that affordability.
And it's important for people to understand you can have both. A lot of people think you've got to make a choice between good capital growth and a good high rental yield, but you don't. In the sort of locations you're highlighting, you can achieve a nice balance of both.
100%. And so for us, we're very selective, very careful with the building partners that we deal with. When we go into a new area, we don't just, great, here's an area, here's a region, let's just go find, any Tom, Dick and Harry builder to build the house for us. We want to make sure that we've got a builder that we trust and we have that absolute confidence in, because we want to ensure for our clients their success, and we're very excited the fact that we do it time and time again. I want to talk about a case study just to demonstrate this, and these Jason and Juliet, they are, I'll come to them in a moment. This is a property that we sourced for them in Joneses Hill in Gympie. It was an estate that we looked at, and we had an opportunity to buy before they were registered. So we went out and we had a look, and we handpicked, there was about 40 blocks, and we handpicked four properties that blocks that we thought would work best for our clients. And we were able to secure a bit of a hold on those with the developer through the relationship also with our builder. We then packaged it up, and then when that property registered, obviously our client settled on it and built. So this was it was actually not handed over yet. We hand over the property next week, and the total package was $578,000. We did a rental appraisal on that property of $575 a week. So actually it had a good rental yield, 5.2%. We handed over that property. It's now valued at $700,000 in less than 12 months. So just through the build process alone, we saw $122,000 uplift. That's a 21% increase. We talk about 20% increase in values just through the COVID period. Our clients have achieved significantly more than that through the last few years. But we are creating instant equity through the uplift through the build of that property. And it's already got a tenant in place, ready to go to move in at $645 a week. So they're now getting a rental yield of 5.8%. So what did we look here? We looked at the infrastructure spend in the area. We found a block that was an area that was elevated, but this particular block at the end of a cul-de-sac, backing onto bush, nice elevated, had some great views. So it has an owner-occupier feel about it. It's not just a cheap and nasty or the cheapest block in an area. We want a property that is going to also, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow for that client. They may need to exit. And so if they have an exit strategy, then they need to sell that property. They're going to still get a great result. Close to schools, parks, transport nodes, high rental demand, as we can see, an affordable area with continued expected growth. And we still see this area growing by some. We do our research very carefully. Herron Todd White, in their recent report, Properties Under 750, talked about this as an area that is of great significance. I mean, Gympie, you're not far from Noosa. You're 45, 50 minutes to the Sunshine Coast. To my office to here, to this particular property, is 55 minutes. And we actually have clients that we're building investment properties for, are actually moving into the properties because they're going, hey, I like the idea of having a bit more space and it's affordable. So let's look at Jason and Juliet. They are a typical Australian family on average incomes. Juliet works in aged care and Jason just recently with the bank. So they're on average incomes. They've got 4 kids. Those kids are getting old. Some of those kids are older, but all of them are living at home. Since 2020, they have built 3 properties with us, despite the media doom and gloom. And Jason and Juliet came to us and said, Danny, we just want to trust you in helping us find the right property to move forward to put ourselves in a better place. Each property is sourced based on our strict criteria, their goals, and within their affordability. They could have sat there and looked at all the research and and but they decided to actually do something about it, and they actually took that first step and bought their first property. In those 3 properties, they have created $775,000. That's $750,000 since 2020 on those 3 properties. Their rental yields based on purchase price, which we Tim and I were just, and yourself were just talking about before, 7.3, 6.8, and obviously 5.8 on this third purchase. And we still see really good, strong growth across their portfolio over the coming years. Their investment portfolio is future-proofed. That's 3 investment properties. 20% of Australians own an investment property. Only 5% of those 20% own 3. So they are a fraction of Australians who are moving ahead and actually doing something about it. But they're the numbers. Which I just chose this randomly chose this property because we're handing it over and we're just putting together information for our client as we hand it over. I said, oh, I'll use that one. We've got countless examples of it. Do you care to comment at all, Terry?
Yeah, I mean, it's great results, isn't it? I think a couple of things stand out for me about the case study. One is that they're an average family on an average income. How many kids did you say they had? 4.
Whoa.
Yeah. A lot of people will think, well, you just can't even contemplate investment in that scenario. But with a plan, with good advice, and a willingness to take action, this is the sort of result an ordinary family on ordinary incomes can achieve. The other thing that stands out for me is the way rental yields are growing so significantly year by year. That 5.8% now, in a couple of years' time, will be over 7% 100%. Or nudging 8%. Just to if you assume 10% rental growth per year, which is pretty modest in the current circumstances, so they're already in cash flow positive situation with their properties, even with the recent uplift in interest rates, and that's great investing.
Well, they got tax advantages too by building new. I know with Washington Brown, who are on this panel, often talk about the fact that there's great cash flow that you can get from a property with your depreciation by building. So 100% of the construction of their house is tax deductible for these clients, which just gives them that I guess confidence and comfort level in holding that property. And being new, they're mitigating any additional surprises and costs that will be occurred in owning those properties because you got your warranties. It's a new build, a new property. It's easily managed. But the key in what you said is they built their team and they have a team around them. It staggers me. It blows my mind, Terry, that people with very limited experience in building or buying investment properties or buying their first investment property do this on their own. They just decide to go out and buy an investment property. I just staggers me that they don't build a team of independent, and the independent is really important, independent specialists around them to achieve their results. And the other thing is they don't just talk about it, they actually did it. The amount of people that I'm seeing at the moment who are just sitting on the fence, umming and ahhing, can't make a decision, they're not about creating wealth. You can attend as many webinars as you want. This is my little rant. I said I was going to rant, but they give you as many webinars and seminars and research as you want. You're not going to make money by attending those. The only way you make money is by actually doing it.
And it's very important, as you say, build your team before you build your portfolio. You've got to be willing to invest in advice and information. I'm amazed how many people think they can penny pinch their way to success with property investment. It just doesn't work like that. And the people I know have had notable success, large property portfolios, all people have treated it as a business, willingness to spend money to make money. So they have a team of great advisors around them, willing to pay them fees to get them good results. And that's the way it works most successfully.
Yeah. Property investment isn't easy. And as I said, you do, majority of property investors do, you'll get the same result that most property investors get, and that's not great. Our job is to be the best at what we can do and create great results for our clients. Very quickly, property markets go through cycles. We talk about the 70-30 rule. 70% of the growth happens in 30% of that cycle, but you invest for the long term. You've got to understand markets within markets, which we've talked about on previous webinars and conversations. I'm not a big fan of the word greed, but the saying, be fearful when everyone is greedy and greedy when everyone is fearful, there's a lot of truth to that. When everyone's scared, I see great opportunity. And as you said at the very beginning, we're now getting access to stock, which we probably wouldn't get access before. We're able to look at lots of land and be able to negotiate and get the best price for our clients. Ignore the media. Build your team of independent specialists. I can't talk about the importance of independent and specialists. Be very strategic with your finance. I think that's really important. A lot of people forget about that. It is boring. I get a real thrill out of doing it, but it's about letting time do its thing. It's time in the market just as much as time in the market as well. But be careful when you get your advice. I can't believe how many people get their advice from around the barbecue. They get their barbecue investing advice or through their colleagues at work, just around the lunchroom. I just, again, ask the question with the people that are giving you that advice. Watch out for the experts. How many properties have you built? How long have you been doing this? What's your run rate? Do you invest where we're investing? They're questions you should be asking the people that you're working with. Be positive, proactive, responsible. I think it's very important. The opposite of being positive is negative. Negative Nellies never move forward. Being proactive, if you sit still, you actually go backwards. If you sit on that fence and you're not doing anything, I'm telling you right now, you're going to regret not making a decision. But you've got to take responsibility. You can't change your past. It's been, it's done, it's written in the book. What you do today determines where you're going to be in the future. So you've got to get your house in order. As you build your team, and if you've got credit card debts, you shouldn't be investing. Get all your bits and pieces in order, and then go out and then find the right property with your property specialist. For us, property is a growth strategy. It's got to be affordable though, and you've got to make sure you're getting those good rental returns. Don't do it on your own. I say that time and time again, but people think they can do it better and they can go do it cheaper, and good luck. Get your ducks in a row. I've got that build your team of specialists said twice because it's really important. That's a bit of an error, but get your ducks in a row. Knowledge is the key, but you actually have to invest. Terry.
Yes, can't disagree with any of that, Danny, but
well, there's a lot more we could put in here too, but research is key. Work with people like Terry and the team. I get advice, and I have my team of people around me helping me in the things that I do. And one of those is research. Whether it be I work with Terry. I talk to the guys from Heronside White, particularly here on the Sunshine Coast team. They're fantastic, and in understanding what has happened and what they've seen on the ground as well. And you can take all that we're a research company. That's what we do. We research, and then we go out and then we find the right opportunity there. So you've got to look at all those things that we talked about.
We just went back and had a look at our best buyers report, national top 10 from 12 months ago, and looked at the results of people had sort of invested at the median price in our top 3 tips in that report 12 months ago. In many cases, there's been 15, 20% or more growth in median prices in those locations at a time where, according to Core Logic, the national average situation is actually a 4% in the national median price. So if you choose your locations well based on research, you can be absolutely outperforming that market average, which becomes irrelevant when you choose really good locations and have a good strategy.
And that's what we do. And, you know, we do outperform, and we have outperformed. We've seen clients over the last 3 to 4 years more have doubled their portfolio value just through the growth that they've and the equity growth that they've received by being smart with where they bought. So is now a good time to be investing? No, it's not. It's a great time to be investing. But you've got to be in the right area, in the right market where there's high demand, limited supply. I mean, those numbers that we looked at, when you look at those numbers from the report, the new Southeast Queensland report, with our population projections that have just been updated, it's a great time to be investing for me as an investor. But build with the right builder, create some immediate uplift if you do it right, and future-proof that investment. It's actually what we do here at 000 Property. Might stop there for a while. Should we go to some questions, Terry?
Yeah, and I would encourage everybody watching and listening to take the opportunity. You've got a noted expert, Danny Buxton, available to answer all your questions about property markets, about investment, about new builds. And you've also got me with all my frighteningly large number of years of experience in the game. Don't waste the opportunity. Type your questions into the Q&A panel, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can in the time we have available. The one is asking, how do you overcome the build phase financially when investing in a house and land package?
Great. Actually, that's a really good question. It is one that is often asked of us. When you buy a property that's already complete, you pay stamp duty on the total purchase price. So, for example, if you're doing a $700,000 or $600,000 purchase, your stamp duty is going to be somewhere around about that $18,000. When you buy on a house and land, and you borrow for that, or you've got to cover that cost for that stamp duty. When you buy land and you build, your stamp duty is only based on the land. So you might only pay $8,000 or $9,000. And then you quarantine some of the rest of that, or you quarantine some funds, and working with the people around you, we know our build times. Your finances are able to work out how much you're going to need to hold your costs during the construction of that house. And invariably, it is significantly less than what it is if you're buying with your stamp duty as a completed property. The other thing is we also get growth in the build as well, because you're the one who's developing that land. If you're buying something already built that's new, they're going to take into account their stamp duty. They're going to take into account their holding costs, and they're going to add that into the price, particularly when we're in a market that's growing. So it's just being a little bit smarter with how we do it. And we're also maximising our deductions. Hey, Stefan, how you doing? See, he's just asked a question about land supply.
Well, it's a very pertinent question, and I'm sure you're very keen to answer that one, Danny.
We're going to run out. There's not enough land when you look at the population that we're going to have. Yes, we are going to see vertical stuff come into play with apartments as well. But wherever possible, I want to, for us at the moment, we're really focusing on that land. It's land that grows in value. And they can only push out so much land at a time. And our population is growing significantly more. We have to literally create a suburb every year. For example, in the Sunshine Coast, we're not doing enough. And there's certainly not enough land being built and developed in Southeast Queensland, if we use that as an example.
I think it's going to be one of the big topics of conversation with the Prime Minister meeting the state and territory premiers. Land supply is a huge part of the shortage problem, and something has to be done about that.
But they can't fix it straight away. You can't just say, okay, we're going to open up the floodgates. It takes a huge amount of time and effort to develop land, and costs, and there's government costs and local government costs and infrastructure costs. And then you've got to get the civil works to be able to do it. Good luck trying to do that. So.
Yeah, that's right. So you've got to go through the bureaucracy and the red tape in the system. It takes a long time to create new stock. In the meantime, the dwellings that currently exist are likely to have upward pressure on their value. Josh is asking, is there likely to be more growth buying an established property in Brisbane within 10 kilometres of the CBD versus a new build elsewhere? I would say no, but what do you think, Danny?
Yeah, I agree. I think it depends. You just got to be very selective with where you go. It doesn't mean that you might get some great growth in a property 10Ks, but depending where it is and how much you're spending. And to me, I look at it like this: is what's the spend going to be? How much is it going to cost me to buy that, as opposed to what I can do in another area where I can maybe do 2 properties, mitigate some of my risk, but actually potentially get even better growth. And it's more affordable for me to hold. So older property too, no tax deductibility or very limited tax deductibility as opposed to new. Great question.
I think also inherent in the question was the assumption that if you're within 10Ks of the CBD, you'll get better growth than building a house in the new growth areas. And I don't think there's any research basis to that. I think it's one of the fallacies of real estate perpetuated by the news media that you get better growth in the inner city suburbs. I don't think there's any truth in that at all.
Well, certain people pushing their cart, but I mean, I look at my portfolio. None of them are in 10Ks from the CBD, and I've outperformed the growth in those 10Ks of the CBD in every instance.
Peter's asking again about the Sunshine Coast, where we'll hopefully be talking about some other markets as we go through the questions, but he's asking whether that market's plateauing now, given the previous high growth.
In some ways, I wish it was. It's not. We're seeing consistent growth happening on the Sunshine Coast, and it continues to grow, particularly in those affordable areas, and that's where we're focusing on. We're not going into high-end areas. We're going to where at that lower end where it's affordable for people to rent. Well, okay, it's still high and expensive to rent anywhere on the coast, but that's where we're tapping into, and that's where we're seeing a consistent year on growth, and see that happening for some time.
I think the plateauing that the question was referring to has already happened in the Sunshine Coast. There's no doubt it had fabulous growth for about 3 years, up until 1 to 2 years ago. It did come off the boil, but it's now sort of through that trough, and it's now starting to rise again.
Last quarter of last year, I was talking to Chris and Stuart from Heron Todd White. They said last quarter, I think the September quarter to the end of the year, they saw, from their perspective, they saw a plateau. They saw it certainly had flattened out. But at the beginning, that first quarter of this year, if my memory is correct, they were talking about, for example, Aura. They'd seen and witnessed 5% increase in value just in that quarter. So very, very positive.
So David's asking questions about the likely movement with interest rates and the consequences of that. Just go through that question bit by bit. CBA has forecast that the RBA will drop interest rates in March next year. I think David, I think you're placing a lot of faith in the forecasting ability of bank economists. They don't have a very good track record on interest rates, property prices, or anything else. So wouldn't assume too much. Do we expect that this will be like throwing petrol on the fire and property market boom again? You're assuming that low interest rate means booming markets and higher interest rates means falling prices. We've just been through a period which disproves all of that. So what are your thoughts, Danny?
Well, 100% agree with you, Terry. I think interest rates don't really, it does impact some people buying property, but what happens, we actually see growth, and we're seeing growth. Where we see growth is through supply and demand. And unfortunately, when we do see interest rates grow, it means less people have the affordability to maybe get in to buy and invest, which just exacerbates and puts further pressure on housing prices. So I don't look at interest rates at all with regards to growth on properties.
It's very much an economist viewpoint that interest rates dictate everything. That's why they get their forecasting wrong. That's why they forecast prices to fall this year, and they actually haven't. They've risen. I think interest rates as a factor in the market is grossly overrated. And if you look at history, you can see why I feel that way. We've had most of our property booms in this country at times of high and rising interest rates, and we've had prices rising this year despite everything. Stefan is asking, has the recent Southeast Queensland Regional Report update changed your projections, I think, on land supply in the future? Something is referring to that report.
No, what it does is it's made me, well, my projections on land supply, no, I think they're trying to work out where the land supply is going to be. They are talking about where they see, where they want dwellings to be. But I look at the land supply on the Sunshine Coast, Moreton Bay, Logan, Ipswich. There is some supply there in that issue. Look, I do think the Ripley area is going to have some significant, it's going to have a big population growth, but there's also still a lot of land there to be developed. So I look at areas where there's limited supply, but looking at that population growth, to me, Stefan, just makes me even more, I mean, I'm already convinced, but even more convinced that we're going to go through a period of significant growth because there is going to be a massive undersupply of property, and it's going to be great for people who are investing. I do feel for those who are trying to find a rental and they're doing it tough, but the reality is I invest to make money and we invest with our clients to make money.
Right. Josh is referring to Port Douglas, far north Queensland, a little bit north of Cairns. Beautiful part of the world, close to the Great Barrier Reef. Lovely place to be. So you couldn't believe how low the prices for established properties are up there. What are your thoughts on long-term growth for areas like this? And do you have any builders in that part of the state?
No. The cost of building up there is absolutely huge because you're in cyclone territory. But look, to us, if you go back to the stuff we just talked about, is looking at what we look for. We want that consistent growth, both from an economic, multiple nodes of, I'm not going to just invest in somewhere just based on tourism. Beautiful place to visit, beautiful place to holiday and stay, but I think you will do far better. And again, the question I ask is, why do you want to invest there? You want to invest to make money. Forget what you like. Forget what you think would be good. Invest where it's going to make you money. If you like it, that's a bonus. I get in trouble for saying that all the time, but I don't buy shares because I like the color of the logo or the logo. I buy shares because I see there is the return that I'm going to get and the growth that I'm going to get based on fundamentals. And
Josh, you might consider the question of why are prices so low in that location, even though it's a gorgeous part of the world.
Yeah.
It's because there hasn't been a lot of growth. Now that's not necessarily a reason not to buy there. If something is changing, we've seen that in many markets around Australia, where places that have had previously a mediocre track record have changed dramatically because of major investment in infrastructure, for example. But I don't see that happening in a place right now like Port Douglas. So I'd be perhaps more focused in other parts of regional Queensland, larger centres.
Places like the Wide Bay, Fraser Coast. There's some really good opportunities in regional Queensland there that we see where there's big infrastructure projects that are going on, where people can benefit from. But at the end of the day, every client, we've got to sit down and understand their needs and then work with them to find out where the best place for them to go.
Yeah. Josh is also asking about the impact of the proposed rent hike freezes and what's likely to have on investment properties. I don't think it's going to have any impact, Josh, because it's not going to happen. We have some pretty dumb politicians in this country, but they're not that stupid. The Prime Minister has said it a number of times, so have a number of the state premiers. They're just not agreeing that a rent freeze is a good idea. It would be counterproductive. It would exacerbate the shortage and put even more upward pressure on the rental market.
If you look at other countries or other areas where they do, I think they did that in the UK, and they reversed that decision very quickly.
in the country of Ireland, one of the most beautiful places on the earth, in my view, great place to visit, but they implemented all the policies that the Greens in Australia would like to implement. Rental freeze, they scrapped negative gearing, and they increased capital gains. They absolutely flogged property investors, demonised them and punished them. And they've got a rental catastrophe far worse than we have in Australia as a result of that. So that's what could happen in Australia if we implemented those sorts of policies here. I don't think it's going to happen. So we have another question. If we're off the plan property,
so they're talking about the off the plan property 10 or 20% initial deposit. That's referring to buying a unit or an apartment. Most developers, and this is where you've got to be careful when you're building or you're buying an off the plan apartment. You have to go unconditional and pay a 10% deposit before the construction starts. And so you've got to be really confident that, number one, when that property is finished, you're going to be able to get a loan, because you don't know what your circumstances are. We don't know where interest rates will be or borrowing is going to be, but also to hopefully that builder will still be there. So that's we're going to be really careful, but it's normally 10% and you're unconditional.
Okay. Thank you, Danny. Look, I've got about 5 minutes to go until we have to wrap things up, so we might sort of start moving into that phase of the wrap up, and I think you've got a call to action for people, and just like people aware who are watching and listening, that you can participate in our webinar poll. Let us know what you thought of today's event, where you thought you found it informative, helpful, provide some guidance for the next time we do one of these, and we're always looking to improve. So Danny, just returning to your presentation.
Yeah, I've got this this poll has popped up on my screen. It's not allowing me to go to my next slide. Here we go. No. I am really sorry. Oh, we go. So, yep, there we go. Look, we often talk about an offer at the end of our webinars, and what we, I guess, something there that we obviously want to give back to a special offer for those attending our Hotspotting webinar. Well, firstly, I'd like to say you get us at 000 Property. You get our absolute undivided attention to help you make the wise, smart decision in where you invest and how to invest. We're committed to seeing you achieve and make money through property. And so I'll give you our absolute word that we will work with you to help you do this, but it's up to you. Like Jason and Juliet, we didn't make that happen. It was them. They made the decision to do this. And they're the ones that made the growth in that property. We're just there to help facilitate that and hold their hand through that process. But those who want to do this, we can give them a choice of either getting Washington Brown is one of your panel partners, and we work with very closely. If they build a property with us, we're happy to either give them an offer of either a Hotspotting membership or a Washington Brown Quantity Surveyors report. But don't invest for those reasons. Invest because you want to make money. Invest because you want to build your team. And we'd love to be part of your team. And if we're not the right fit, that's okay. But do something, but do it with the right advice and the right people around you.
Yeah, I'd like to endorse that, Danny. I think it's so important to be willing to spend money to make money, to invest in good advice and good information, to make sure all the decisions you're making are the right ones, because you'll make more money and have greater success in the end if you do it that way. Danny, if people want to follow up and make contact with you.
There it is. Just invest at 000property.com.au. If you just Google 000 property, 00 property, or 000 property, that'll pop up as well. Or you can ring us on 1300 897 000. Look, we're a boutique company. We work very closely with our clients, and we'd love the opportunity to work with you. I told Adam I'd mention his name in this webinar. Adam, I'm looking forward to you give me a ring and having a chat and making that decision to move forward.
Okay, thanks, Danny. Thanks for a great presentation. I found it enlightening and interesting as always. I particularly enjoyed your case study because it was a real eye-opener in terms of what can be achieved by the average family on an average income despite having to feed 4 grown kids. Great results, but it's a tribute to them, the fact that they were willing to put some faith in themselves and make decisions and go forward, and they're getting great results. I'm sure they'll keep going. If you got that sort of result from your first 3, you want to keep going, and I'm sure they will. I'll urge others
Great family, and it just absolute delight to work with Jason, Juliet, and we've got countless other people like this, Terry. This is the thing, many clients the same.
Yeah. Okay, so I urge people to follow up with the either the phone number or the email that you see on the screen. It doesn't cost you anything to make an inquiry and have a chat to Danny and his team to see what the possibilities for you are to achieve the sorts of results that Danny's clients that he used as a case study today have achieved in the last few years. Thanks, Danny. Let's do it again soon. Thanks, everyone, for your participation. We will do it again soon. Bye for now.
Thank you.